Shalom Aleichem. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Alicia Brook. I run the Shayech program here at Nefesh B'Nefesh. Today's webinar will be focused on making Aliyah with high school age girls. We're going to be discussing what that looks like, the schools, the integration, and everything that goes into that. Before we begin, I want to remind our viewers, as always, we highly recommend that you do your research, look into what Aliyah looks like, prepare, speak to a Rav that knows you, a Rav that understands the challenges of Aliyah. Prepare is no rush, take your time, and we are here to help. We are a resource and we're happy to help, so please be in touch if you have any questions. We are very privileged to have with us tonight Rabbi Yossi Friedman. Amongst many other things, Rabbi Yossi is the Executive Director of Project Inspire, and he will be moderating this webinar today. So without further ado, Yossi.
Thank you very much, Alicia, and it's a big honor to be back over here, especially at a time like this in this crazy world that we live in today. People are contemplating Aliyah and really considering it maybe more than ever before, at least in my lifetime, maybe our lifetime. And it's a privilege to be here together. I'm joined today by Mrs. Shana Pagro, MSW, who's the director of Parental Guidance Center who's the director of the Parental Guidance Center at Epic Families. She's here joining us tonight, as well as Rebbe Tzinial Margolis, who is the guidance counselor, the Yoetzet at Penine Chen High School in Ramat Beit Shemesh. I want to welcome you both and thank you very much for taking the time to be here. And today we're here to discuss really specifically those who are contemplating Aliyah from Chutz La'aretz, are planning on coming, but have older children, or people who are contemplating Aliyah or in the process of making Aliyah who have younger children, but are concerned about the age range of older children, what that looks like in the Israeli system. Many people are scared or nervous. They've heard horror stories. And today I think that we're going to address some of those issues that have come up and some of those topics together and hopefully gain a little bit of clarity. Again, the purpose of today is really to have an open discussion about it and give people ideas, resources, and things to think about. So without further ado, Mrs. Pago, if you don't mind, I'm going to start with you. Mrs. Pago, you're coming sort of from the perspective of parental guidance in this process in Epic Families, etc. Can you, however, explain to us and the viewers what is the Israeli, specifically with girls? That's what we're talking about, girls' high schools today and girls' high school age. Describe what, quote unquote, the system looks like for girls in high school and high school age. What the system looks like, what the range is, what the different, the scope of what we're dealing with when we deal with high schools with girls, if you don't mind.
Okay, so I would say that we have the Bais Yaakov system, which is one system. We have I'll call it the more American style Bais Yaakov system, and then we have the Dati Leumi system, are the three main systems. The straight Bais Yaakov system, the traditional Israeli Bais Yaakov system, has 9th through 12th grade. In Israel, it's called seminar. It's not even called Tichon, because Tichon is a modern type school. It's called a seminar. It's 4 years of school. There is their own internal system of tests. They do not do Bagrut, the government matriculation systems. They do Chutzim, is what they're called. They are similar, they're comparable, but it's a different system. Then, traditionally, most girls who do that system go on to 2 more years of school that they call either Hey Vav or Yud Gimel Yud Daled, and they choose a maslul, a track, thank you, of study there. It could be teaching, it could be architects, it could be many different things today.
Computer programming.
Right, there's a lot of options today, but they do not get an actual degree. They don't get a bachelor's in something. It's usually 2 years. Some schools have options to do hashlamot, I'm thinking in Hebrew, I'm sorry, more level of work to go onward to the next stage. But that is the most traditional Israeli Bais Yaakov system. A lot of schools exist today that we call more of the American style Bais Yaakov system. It's 4 years of high school that they call seminar. Some do bagrut, which is again the government matriculation system. Some do not. It depends on the school. And from there, one can choose to go on again to do maslulim in the Israeli system. There's another option that exists, which are extension schools of universities specifically for Haredi girls. And in those schools, they get a proper bachelor's degree. There are a lot of girls that choose today to do those degrees. You do not need to have a full bagrut for it. It's not necessary. There's either a 6-month or a year program of what they call a mechina, a certain amount of preparatory classes that they take that are prerequisites, and then they go on to a regular program and they can get a degree, a full degree in almost anything today.
Right.
You have the Dati Lubi system, which is a regular, matriculation, bagrut, and they go on to wherever they want after.
Okay, just to touch on that, most people who are coming from the States, let's say in America, just what I'm familiar with, the bagrut would be the equivalent of regents or accreditation. Like what like how can we compare it to sort of what they're used to in terms of the accreditation, et cetera, from where they're coming from?
So I'm actually wondering if Rebbetzin Margolios should answer that better than me, because she's more up to date working in the high schools. But because regents today in America, from what I know, are very, very basic. You take very few. When I did them, there were in many subjects, but no limodei kodesh.
Right.
In Israel, you have it's a dual curriculum. So you're taking them in all the Judaic studies as well as in the secular studies. I think it's much more intensive than what they do in the Regents system. And Regents are only in New York. As far as I know, anywhere else in America, there's nothing.
Right. Okay, good. That's a very good point. Rebbetzin Margolis, Mrs. Pagua is sort of painting the scope and the range in which people can sort of choose, what they want to put their kids into which system, etc. Without getting too technical, though, there are a lot of parents who they're okay with different systems and they understand that it differs, but what they're most concerned about is there a future for my daughter in Israel? I mean, in America or wherever they're coming from, and this is maybe not only in New York, is that you graduate high school, you can go to college, you could still marry a Kollel guy, you could still have him learn from, you could juggle this whole, mess, if you will, together. But here, people because they're unfamiliar, they want to know, is there a future for my daughter? How would you sort of lay out the system to give parents an idea of like what the future looks like for a girl coming out of high school in the different range of systems?
Mm-hmm. I think that when we're talking about a future, for different people, it means very different things. Some people, when they're talking about future, they mean a career. Some people, when they talk about a future, they mean happiness.
Right.
Some people think about Yiddishkeit, marrying a ben Torah. Like it's a very tricky question. What you're asking, what is the future? What I would want to add to this is that I think it's very important before you make Aliyah. I think it's not just for people making Aliyah, but just because you like pause life in a way and you're thinking about things. I think it's a very good question to ask. What is important to me? What is the most important to me when I'm looking at my daughter? She's maybe in 7th, 8th, 9th grade now. What is my inside of me and my wife together, whatever, as a family, what is the value? When we mean that we are worried about her future, that we want her future to be good, what are we talking about? And we want to have one main answer. Everybody has everything. Also this, also this. If you're focused with one thing and that's where you're going to, that's where you're going to put your energy. That's going to help you make the decisions, what you're going to do. So, and then the other things, those will come afterwards. What are the big rocks you're going to put inside first? So I think that it's such an important thing. And when you come and you have that clear, things will be much easier for you, and you'll be able to make decisions, to compromise about things, but you won't compromise about what's the most important to you.
Right. I just want to touch on that point, is that, one of the things of, future, and you're touching on an excellent point, which is, and I think this is sort of a life's lesson, certainly with regard to children, is that, like, what do you really want from them as your highest priority? But I guess coming from America, parents have a feeling of like there are just options, which means I could start my daughter off with what's most important to me and us as a family, and like sometimes it just doesn't fly. Okay, so you pivot and you sort of change direction, but there's a land of options. When we talk about a future, sometimes, like, are those options existent in Israel for people to know that even if I am thinking about these main priorities, but okay, what if not? Okay, then that's it, all bets are off.
Right. So I would be very interested also to hear what other people say about this, but I'm going to go back to what I said before, because I think that in America, I didn't grow up in America, so I don't know, but just like meeting for years and years parents and making Aliyah from America and hearing the way things are there, I feel like in America, there's like a feeling that you could do everything. That means that you could also have a very high education. You could also go to a real Bais Yaakov school. You could also send your daughter to the best seminary post-high school after 12th grade. She could go to the top Bais Yaakov strong school. She could also marry a boy from Brisk. Like, she could do everything together. The way that, in a way, there's something over here in Eretz Yisroel that you have to pick where you're going. You can't do everything. You're not going to marry the frummest guy and then go to university. It doesn't work here together. So that's why I'm saying, if somebody's saying, I want to know what the options are, there's many options. But the question, if you know what's the most important to you, so then you could play around with it. So there's options. You could do anything. The question is, like, what's the most important? Because if making money is the most important, there's lots of ways, right? If career is, there's lots of ways. If a house of Torah and a ben Torah, there's lots of ways. So people live here. We live here and we work it out. But coming here, you have to know, and I'm saying this again, you have to know what's the most important to you. If the most important thing for you is giving to the land of Israel and connecting to Israel and to the army and to giving to Eretz Yisrael, and that's such an important value to you. So you're going to have to understand that go that way if that's the most important. If the most important thing for you is that you want your daughter to marry a kollel guy that is going to learn 24/7, like her older siblings or things like that, go a certain way. If you want it to be, like a little bit more open, like you could go a certain way. So you have to ask the questions. You have to be clear with what do I want, and then ask the question, what system will bring me there?
Mrs. Pago, I'm hearing from Rebbe Margolis is that it's a priority system. However, it's also setting expectations. I mean, how do you see that balance with people that are making Aliyah?
Okay, so I agree very much with what Rebbetzin Margolis said. When I meet with families pre-Aliyah to help them figure out what is a good school for them, what is a good system, I always ask them, where do you see your children in 10 years from now? Which is very similar. What are my goals long term? What am I looking for? Where do I want to see them ending up? And very often parents don't know, because it's hard to know what my children's need will be, what their capabilities will be. And in America, they don't have to figure those things out. So it is a place where people really need to put in the work and figure out and understand that if I choose this system, I can have A and B. I may not be able to have C and D. And if I choose this system, I may not end up with this. So it is a very, very important thing to understand pre-Aliyah, because things are much more polarized here. And you do have to put yourself in a box a certain amount before you come. I just want to add the piece that we're talking about teenagers. And what keeps on coming up for me is parents can have a certain box that they want, but that box doesn't always work for their children, their teens. I don't know if you want to go there yet or not, but I just want to, mention it, and I think we need to give it some time. Parents also have to know what's going to work for their child. Parents can decide, I'm making Aliyah, I want to go the full Israeli Bais Yaakov Ad Hasof system. I think it's great. But my 15-year-old daughter grew up in a different world than that, can't necessarily handle going into that real Israeli Haredi Bais Yaakov system because it's not going to match what she was taught. It's not going to match the expectations that she's used to. And that could be really hard and that could really backfire. So what parents want and their goals are very important, but they really need to take their children and where their children are holding and how old their children are into account as well when they're making the decisions.
Right. I think that that's very valuable. I also just want to touch on what Rebbe Margolis said, which is, you're right. There are parents, again, we're going to the parents, but we are talking about teenage girls here. There is a feeling coming from the States or Chutz La'aretz that you could sort of have the whole gamut. You know what I'm saying? You can, have a career, and you could be in university, and you could marry the firmest guy, and to be honest, like, I'm laughing saying it now, but like, yeah, it is possible, but here, is it really black and white in the sense of like, can my daughter not have a real, from education, Bais Yaakov education, and yet I really want to build up a business. I really want to be an entrepreneur, and at the same time, have a husband that's a real Ben Torah and Yerushalayim, and like, is there not that? I don't want to say have it all, because maybe there are aspects of like, yeah, if you're going to go to 12 years of medical school and research or whatever it is, maybe not, but like, is there a gray area with regard to making that happen, or is it sort of like something that you won't have to give up on in order to live here?
Okay, so I think if you asked me that question 15 years ago, maybe even trying to think how old my daughters are, because that's how I'm judging it. If you'd asked me that question 15 years ago, there were no options in this middle area. You either did Masulim, you became a teacher, that was like you wanted to be from Kola lifestyle, that was what there was. Over the years, a lot more options have opened for Haredi girls who are coming from the Haredi system, built for Haredi girls, built for Bais Yaakov girls, separate schools, separate classes, only female teachers. Today, a girl can get a degree in optometry. She can get a degree in nursing. She can get a full computer science degree. She can get a degree in occupational therapy, speech. There are so many options where they can make a parnasa and they can support a husband learning in kollel and really do it properly and be able to afford to live, but in a from appropriate Toradic environment, and that is new, and it's constantly developing. And I think today there are many options for from girls, really Toradic options that did not exist. Not everyone loves that, but there are definitely many more options than
I
there
was
were.
gonna touch on the not everyone loves that. Rebbe Margolis, you're living in the school system, you're dealing with parents, which you're catching a lot of aliyah makers, in your lap, so to speak, and having to guide them. Mrs. Pago is basically saying times have changed. Your take on the times have changed.
I think that certain things did change. I do see that girls making aliyah in high school, a lot of girls, if they don't get the Hebrew well enough in order to go afterwards and feel comfortable getting a degree, if they come when they're younger, so they get already the Hebrew well enough and they could do it. I see a lot of the girls that come in older ages, 9th, 10th, 11th grade, that struggle with it very much. We could have like bodedim, like we could have yechidim that could do it. If we're talking about the school, a lot of them end up doing like online things and are not really able. I see a lot of girls struggling with that afterwards. I just want to say that about the time changing. So I think that theoretically, there are more options for Americans. But just you should know is that it doesn't mean that if you're making Aliyah in older age that you'll feel comfortable enough with. We're having girls going to English speaking programs. Machon Tal has some sort of program that is in English. I don't know so much about it, but we have quite a few students that went there afterwards because they couldn't do the Hebrew.
Right.
Another thing is that we're saying times are changed. So now I'm going to just speak about something that is, I think it's important to know, is that a lot of people, let's say they sent their older daughter to I'll say like a very stark seminary after 12th grade. The American seminaries, the very strong American seminaries, do not take Olim. And that is like 100%. Like any BJJ and BYA, I don't know, like all these places, and they don't take so they're also limited over there. I think that's important to know. So some people say, oh, my older daughter went there. Why can't the next one go just because we made Aliyah? There's like three, 4 places that are like more Bais Yaakov that will take. So that's also something just to know about. You're talking about the options. Theoretically, there's much more options, but it's still limited. It's still limited. I think the fromest school, I don't know how to measure them, but like Machon Raya is like, I think like the fromest school that will take girls that live in Israel.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, Rabbi
And also that's very limited. They only take 1 or 2. That school will only take 1 or 2. They're very nervous about the girls that will lot. They feel like they were already different, and they're very nervous about it.
It's also to their defense. They also want to have a real immersive experience in seminary,
100%.
and the fact that people live here, makes it less immersive. So there could be other factors as well. But this, Rabbi Margolis is touching on the, like sort of these issues, the balance, and we touched on the times have changed. Practically speaking, I'm sure you get these phone calls all the time, but like, for every phone call you get, 5 people are thinking about it and are not necessarily calling. Is that okay? Where do you begin to start looking for schools? They all sort of, I guess, look the same. And this one said it's so from, and that one said this is so from, and this one said, how do you start to begin and decipher this puzzle of schools and high schools for girls in Israel as an Ola?
Well, I would say it like this. That is part of the work we do here in Epic Family. We do work with families pre-Aliyah, and since you brought it up, I have to say it.
Right.
But what I would recommend to people in general is first they have to really do some soul searching. As Rebbetzin Margolis said, who are we really? What are we looking for in making Aliyah? What are our goals for our family? A lot of people are coming now because anti-Semitism, the situation in Eretz, and that's very important, obviously. But what am I coming here for? I'm moving halfway across the world. What does my family need? What do my children need? What are their academic needs? Which is very, very, very important. Or what are their academic limitations or challenges? What are their emotional challenges or limitations? How have they done socially in the past? How do they do with transition and change? There's so many questions that I need to ask because as much as I may feel it's not safe, I don't want to be there, I have to do it in a way that's healthy and appropriate for my family. Because obviously my family being healthy and stable is the most important piece of the picture here. So I do have to do that assessment. If I have children who are in therapies or who have special needs, to speak to really, I always say, speak to the therapists that are working with your children now. I get these messages, hi, I have a child with special needs. I want to know if it's okay to come. I'll say to them, I don't know anything about your child. You want to send me their evaluations? That's great. You want to tell me what their diagnosis is, but I don't know your child. I don't know where they're holding. Speak to the people who are supporting your child now, who are working with them, and they're the best ones to assess what's going on.
Right.
If you decide it's right and appropriate for your family to make Aliyah, then the next stage is it could be which community is right, but really which schools are right for my kids, because I would love to live in Yerushalayim. It's my dream. Everybody wants to live in Yerushalayim, but are there schools that are appropriate for my children in Yerushalayim? If I have older children, again, we're talking about high schools, are there high schools that have the capability to support my child, to help them learn the language, to give them the skills they need, to understand how difficult it's going to be for them? I would say, really, to the best of my knowledge, there's one school in Yerushalayim that supports Olim girls, the one main school, and they can't take 20 Olim every year, because then you're a school that doesn't have
Right.
an actual class going on. You're teaching OPAD to everybody.
Right.
So that's also a big factor in it. So how do I find out about the schools once I've made this decision? A lot of it, I find that people network, they talk to friends. Everybody knows someone who's made Aliyah already. Everyone knows someone who's living in different communities. Speak to your friends, speak to people who have children in the schools. Remember though, that one person's experience is not necessarily going to be yours.
I was actually, I want to pause you because I want to touch on that, because, you know, Rebbe Margolis touched on a point of, you know, that Hebrew is a challenge, and you weren't downplaying that as a challenge, depending on the age, you know, that girls come. Rebbe Margolis, what are some of the other, you know, again, people are searching for schools and they're trying to do the research, but what are some other natural challenges that girls that age might run into? Hebrew is one of them. You know, are there others that come to mind that parents might not even be thinking about, you know, when it comes to making these decisions?
Yeah. So before I speak about the other challenges, I want to speak about another part of the challenge of the language. A lot of times we see the language as being a challenge more in an academic way, and if you're in a more Israeli system, of more in a social way, right? So in Ramat Beit Shemesh, we see it more in an academic way because there's so much English around. But the truth is that what I think is the biggest challenge with the Hebrew is that the girls are not able to get the limudei kodesh and the hashkafa in their mama tongue. In order to connect to Yiddishkeit, you have to, it's not something you could just translate the whole time. You're trying to get like the feelings of it. And if you're like constantly trying to translate, like it's already boring. It's like a class. It's like, so I feel, this is just something that I see, is that the girls are missing, the girls that make Aliyah, they're missing in the Yiddishkeit because they're not always getting the hashkafa because of the language. We try in our school, we started the last 2 years, every time we have a speaker comes and there's, or even just like a big kenes or something, we have a teacher writing toch kedei, like there's a translation, everything. We also do it to the parents, toch kedei, as it's happening, that they could hear the story or the thing, but still, I think it helps them just not to be so bored, but still, when you're reading something, it's not always that you're getting that. So I just want to say is that it's very important, if we're talking about the Hebrew, that in some sort of way to keep up, that the kids should get hashkafa in English. If it's through shiurim, if it's through, I don't know what exactly is available, I don't know, Torah Anytime, or things that to continue to grow, to have, if there's a good teacher in America that's like a role model or something, to have a Zoom once a week to learn together.
You're saying to
Really
supplement the hashkafic,
yes,
you know, mother tongue element of seeping in with that, and not just to rely on sort of reading the translation of in order to get that information. That's
yes.
fascinating.
Yes.
What other resources have you implemented to be able to like at least accommodate the, you know, that lack of feel or knowledge?
We try in our school is to try to you know, to put words in English, to give the kids a little bit of, you know, just to like a little bit of understanding, to give a background. Okay, this is going to be about this, But I'm telling you, the bottom line is that I feel like they're lacking. And sometimes they like go afterwards to, to seminary, and they just hear it in English, and it's like, oh, like you're teaching us something. We never heard that. Like you heard it 100 times, but even if you could get 100 on the test, you didn't come in. So I'm just saying is that I think that that's very, very important, a very important piece to have in mind. And don't rely on the schools, because we can teach in English. If we'll teach in English, your kid will never know Hebrew.
Right.
Like you don't want that to happen. But I'm just saying that's like a very important thing to have in mind. And you were asking before, what are the other challenges?
I imagine, for example, social challenges, the element of how girls deal with each other, or anything that, comes up socially, or, you're basically parachuting girls into a brand new system. I'm asking what other challenges come up, in terms of how you see it play out.
Yeah. I think that the social thing is a very big thing in high school in general, is a very big thing. I think not just making Aliyah, any girl in high school that switches schools, it's a really, like, I think the most tears that I saw in my office was not because I don't understand the classes, and not because I miss America and I miss the big things or whatever I had there, not because of that. It's just like finding myself. Um, Also from the parents, the mothers also, you lose your friends, your support, you lose your self-confidence in a way of who you are, and you have to build it from the beginning. It's not really lost, it's more covered up, but you don't reach it, and it's hard. It's hard. I see that um I see that girls do adjust to that. It's very hard, but I won't say that that's a reason not to make Aliyah. The friends, because usually the girls that struggle there with friends will struggle the same way here. It's something that if there's not a social issue, they'll work it out, even with a lot of tears. They'll work it out in the end. They'll figure it
Right.
out. Another challenge that I see is there's certain rules here in the system that are just so different than some schools. I think maybe in New York, certain schools, maybe the girls are more used to that, but like just certain rules with technology and with the way that you have to look. And it's like, what are you talking about? Like, well, why does that make sense? And like a lot of that, and a big thing, it sounds funny, it's a big adjustment, is the Sunday school on Sunday. That means you don't have a day off. That's a huge thing. Also for the families, it's like, whoa, like when do we spend time? Like when do we do things together? So sometimes you could even have, I'm saying the truth, you could have girls being very put off by certain ways that are accepted over here.
Mi-
Um,
Mrs.
yeah,
Yeah, I just want to touch on this, Mrs. Pago, because Robert Margolis sort of like touched on, the word technology and all that, and how they deal specifically with, in the schools, and people are put off by it. Would you say that that's like in the wide range? Like, is that all schools? Are there schools that deal with it, differently? And are there schools that are sort of like less putting girls off by these type of the rules? Like what's your experience been with with girls adjusting in the system?
So I think schools across the board have a pretty strong policy about technology. I think it's pretty much uniform within the range of schools that we're talking about here. Could be some schools are stricter about if someone at home is texting or so, but there's an across the board kosher phone is the way to go.
texting. Who texts today?
No,
Only
that's what she's
in
saying.
Lebanon.
Right. But that's what I think Mrs. Pago was saying, is that it's sort of not accepted within the scope of schools that we're talking about here.
It's very not accepted. It's they're and the schools are strict about it because they are.
Right.
I just wanna bring something up as Eretz Margolis is talking here that was coming up very strongly for me is there is a lot of adjustments and a lot of things that are very challenging for the girls. I feel very strongly from what I've seen over the years is that parents can do a lot to help their daughters and their children in the adjustment, and they can do a lot of damage with the adjustments. And I think that when parents come, they have to be very on board. And first of all, the two parents have to be in the same place. So when one parent really wants to come and one really doesn't, unfortunately, I've seen this a few times already. They ended up leaving. It didn't work. So both parents have to be on board. They have to understand that there are going to be a lot of challenges for their children and acknowledge the things. If they think everything will be rosy and great, forget it. Acknowledge that it will be hard, but we will help you. We will be there with you in it. We will do our best, to help in this process. But their attitude is really important. And when parents are choosing a school, I say, don't choose a school and say, oh, at home, we don't have to keep those rules. Or we don't, the school's a really good school academically. It's got a great name. So we're going to send you there. But really, our hashkafa, that's not what we do. Because that's a recipe for disaster. And it's really going to hurt their kids. So either, well, why do I have to listen to my teacher? Because my mother doesn't care what my teacher says. And why do I have to dress that way, what the takanon says? Because my mother doesn't think it's important. So parents must be on board with what they choose.
So play this out for me, meaning, so the kid comes home and like Rebbe Margolis said, some girls are put off by this. The parent is thinking to themselves like, whoa, that is heavy, I must admit. But we really want this, so what's the message?
Well, I think parents have to prepare for that beforehand. In other words, they have to know before that if I'm choosing this, I'm going to have to back this up. And I'm going to have to, look, sometimes the school may choose to do something or the way they act isn't working for a child, and a kid has to know that their parents have their back. It's a very fine line. But Lamaisa Begadol, if you choose a school and it has certain rules and certain expectations, you have to abide by those rules. Or don't send your child there because you're doing a disservice to everyone. It's not fair to the school, it's not fair to your child, it's gonna wreak havoc in your home. So it's just not worth it. If a kid comes home, oh, my teacher said X, and the parent is very shocked by it, I think the parents have to say, wow, I need to think about that, or I want to understand more, or something that's more neutral. I hear you. I understand that was really hard for you to hear. Let me hear more about it. Like to have a conversation. Why don't you go to the Oetzet and speak to her about it? Why don't you go discuss it with your mechanechet? Encourage dialogue, encourage communication, because a child needs to feel heard. So that's an important, as I said, it's a balance, fine line.
You're right. I want to ask over to Margolis. I mean, this is obviously a very tricky situation, because no matter what you prepare for, like Mrs. Pagor said, before you make Aliyah, we all know as parents of kids here in Israel that like there's always that one kid who comes up from school and you're like, they did what? They said what? And now if you have gone through the system over here, so okay, but if you're new to this, no matter what you prepare for, there's always that moment of like, wow, what is an honest and open way to discuss that with your child? That I want to like, Ma, I'm a high school girl. You can't possibly think this is normal. We know each other for 15 years. Like, this is crazy, So like, what does that conversation look like?
Yeah. I think it makes such a big difference. Like, like when it's your first child and then afterwards we react so differently to these things. And I think that it's not just an aliyah question. I think that it's a chinuch question in general. I think that I'm sure parents see that in America, and also Israelis see that it's a real chinuch question. But I would say that when we are in our own space and in our own like what's familiar to us, so in a way, like it's more easier for us to reach our like natural wisdom, and we're able to use like our chachma as parents to deal with it, even if it's not right in the script. But when we don't understand the system at all ourselves, And we don't know, is that like sometimes we lose, like, you know, like our inner confidence as parents. So then we could say like things that are not wise, like, or we could just go back the kid completely, and like, because we want to be with them because we're also shocked, or we just don't listen to the kid and we back the school. We just lose our inner wisdom. I would say that it's very much kedai that you should have like somebody that you speak to in Israel that knows the system, that maybe had kids in the system, that you could run things by. And sometimes you could have a lot of knowledge and insight when you speak to somebody about that. I would say, you know what? I hear what you say. I want to think about it, and I would get Eitzah. I would get Eitzah on that until you'll learn it yourself, until you'll get back to your inner chokhmah, that you'll know yourself. But in the beginning, we lose it sometimes.
Right. Meaning you're saying that the conversation with your daughter looks something along the lines like what Pago was alluding to, which is, I hear you. You know, I'm also learning how things work over here. You know, let me think about this. Let me get some advice. Why don't we discuss this tomorrow? Type thing, where
Yes.
you're being honest and the fact that, like, what do you mean? It's totally normal that they did
Yes.
that. And the girl's looking at you saying, like, you can't possibly think that, you
Yes.
know, and you know, but at least you're honest and open, but get eight in terms of directly. You think
Yes.
that's the
Yes. In general, what we see in the school is that parents that, even if they don't know the system, but really from inside, they trust the system, they trust the people, they communicate, they don't attack,
right,
they're grateful, like their kids do much better.
right.
That's everywhere, but we see that it makes it so much easier. It's like if like the mother, yeah, the parents, we see that
Right.
positivity being also an example for the kids, and just takes a lot of stress out.
Reverend Timmerlos, I'm going to ask a final question, and then I'll have Mrs. Pagro finish before we close this out. But you're a yoetz a guidance counselor in a school that has a lot of alot, you know, people, families that have made aliyah, and we discussed lots of issues today. We discussed lots of you know, ideas in terms of dealing with this, but you also on a daily basis see lots of success and how the system as is working for families that are making aliyah, and you're seeing the growth of the families. What does that look like to you in terms of the, you know, how you're seeing that, and also how would you attribute that to what the next slew of aliyah makers are going to face, and the difference that's going to make for the next batch of olim and olot that are coming after that? To meaning what does success look like when you see elements of the success, and the fact that they are successful today, how does that pave the road for the next, you know, families that are coming?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you're asking what does success look like, I think that success, we'll see success not always when the girl finishes high school. That means is that even if she got a full Teudat Bagrut and she learned Hebrew, that's not success in my eyes. Success is, to me, and I see it a lot, is when the girls start dating. And the girls that were crying through high school will say, I will not date a boy that wants to live in America. That's success to me. It's not that it's not hard, but it means that the kid, that we have a new generation of people that are connected to here. And all the tears and all the hardships, there's a new generation that wants to connect to be here. And that's success to me. So they didn't get the Hebrew, so the next generation will get it. So they didn't do the Bagrut. If good. They find other things to do it. They could make it up afterwards. If they're from and they're happy and connected, that's success. To me, in my eyes. And I think that being honest, when parents are honest with themselves, you know what, I like it when sometimes parents come and they say, you know why I made Aliyah? Because I didn't have money to live in America and it was too expensive. I'm like, you know what? You're honest. You're not trying to do all these and then the kid is honest. And then they'll tell me exactly what the problem was with the kid in America. And she need extra help. So right away we could give them the extra help over here. And they're honest and connected, and they'll be there for their kid. And what you said before, and if there's something hard and they don't know, they say, I don't know. And it's not like we have to show everyone. In another place, you come to Eretz Yisroel, I think you learn a lot of anava. And even if you come all, like, Eretz Yisroel teaches a lot of anava. And if you come like with that, I'm coming to grow, I'm coming in an honest way, I'm going to be open about the challenges. I'm not trying to show off. I'm not trying to be a success story. I'm just trying to help my child and try to do the right thing for my life situation. We see a lot of success over there. Yeah, and we don't know. We come in a place that we don't know, and a place that we could accept, and we're learning. And then we see that from the kids.
Amazing. Mrs. Pargo, you too, you're advising people before, you're helping people through the process, you're meeting parents. What does success look like to you? And what do you think it means to the people that are coming after?
It's an interesting question. I was thinking, as you asked Mr. Margolius, what do I think is success? I think a child who is happy, who feels settled here, who, a person who is healthy emotionally is going to be healthy in their frumkeit, healthy in their relationships, healthy in their life. Agreed. Successful Aliyah is not getting a bagrut. Yes, having a bagrut, not having a bagrut. It's settling here. It's feeling that this is where I belong, that this is my home. Again, it's interesting when you say, what do we see from today's experiences and impacting the future? Again, 10 years ago, I would tell people, you have kids high school age, don't you dare come whatever you do. You're destroying your children. And things have changed, and it's still a challenge. It's a bigger challenge with older kids, with teens, but there are more options now. And I think the groundwork has been laid. The schools have learned what the girls need much more. We're all smarter when we advise parents. There's preparatory work that parents can do to help their kids prepare more, learning the language, even basics a little bit, getting more familiar with the system, coming to visit, seeing things, meeting people. I think that there's more, knowing that there's success breeds success, and knowing that people have done it successfully means there's more hope for us to do it successfully as well. And the more people I meet that did it successfully gives me hope, and it gives my kids hope that we can do it as well. But again, I just want to stress that piece, that parents have to know that it will take time, and it's a process, and it will be a rocky road sometimes. If everything is perfect, I get very nervous because I wait for the explosion to happen. It's normal. It's a process that takes time. The more settled parents are, the more they're there for their children, the more they hear their children, the more the children feel safe, the more successful their aliyah is going to be. And when it's hard, yes, it's hard. I know it's hard. I'm sorry, it's hard for me too sometimes. And when parents can admit that and say that, then kids feel safe and heard, and they're more open to growing and learning and integrating, which is really what we want.
Amazing. Rebbitzin Margolis and Mrs. Pargo, I want to thank you again for being here. I think that the insight has been tremendous and really paints the picture of what things look like, and really, I think gives a lot of hope to people that are, still contemplating, or, that Mirz Hashem, and at the end of the day, Hashem runs the world. It's tremendous Yad D'Shmaya. A lot of davening goes into this. And Eretz Hashem, you'll continue to be matzliach with the people that are making Aliyah and helping them be successful with their children, with their own lives. I want to thank you both for being here. I want to thank Nefesh B'Nefesh for showing us that it's Shayech. No pun intended from the words behind me. But thank you very, very much for joining us. Appreciate it.